What's up, A to Z Sports here live on a Thursday. It's one of those weeks where you kind of forget what day it is because you guys are down there at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, and we're not doing industry topics because practice starts at 9:30 in the morning at the University of South Alabama for the Reese's Senior Bowl. And today we're taking a break from quarterback talk, Sam. We're going to go into something in a position that you paid attention to a lot yesterday at practice, and that is the wide receiver group here at the Senior Bowl. And Titans Kyle immediately in the YouTube chat, wide receivers, my favorite subject. Aren't they all? We all love some wide receiver talk. And so, but where does the Titans wide receivers needs fit in and rank among their other needs? We all know quarterback's a need. Offensive line is perpetually a need for this team. But what about the wide receiver group and the guys that Sam was watching and keeping an eye on yesterday at day 2 practice of the Senior Bowl that could be good fits? But where? Second round? There's no third round pick. There's a couple fourth round picks. You got day 3 picks. But where will the Titans be looking for wide receivers? And who are those guys to fall into those slots? So Sam, welcome in. We're going to have a good show here on this Thursday morning. Tell the people what they got to do before we officially get it going.
All right. Before we get into it this morning here on a Thursday morning, A to Z, make sure everybody goes ahead and shares the show. If you're watching on Facebook, go hit that share button in the bottom right corner. Watching on YouTube, take the YouTube link, send it to a friend, a Titans fan, a group chat in your life, and let them know A to Z is live. We're talking Senior Bowl wide receivers, so you got to tune in to find out who is going to be in play for the Titans in the NFL draft coming up. This is preliminary, but if you'll remember when we did these very conversations this time last year, Austin, these guys that I was previewing and talking about being Titans names to watch, well, one of them ended up being the Titans pick in the second round of the NFL draft. So got a great show today, going to get into it. So share the show and like the show before we kick it off on a Thursday morning.
Yep, let's do it officially. Welcome into A to Z Sports, powered by the BetMGM app. I'm Austin Stanley. He is Sam Phelan down there at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama. And we are Nashville's on-demand sports network going live weekday mornings at 8 Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show segment by segment on our Twitter X timeline. Hit us up on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more great Titans content. Also, 5-star Google reviews on the company, A to Z Sports, when you have a chance. But do got to thank our sponsors. They make it happen for us, and they help out all of you. Wilson County Hyundai, make them a part of your new car buying process. WilsonCountyHyundai.com. The Bone and Joint Institute, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Get better with Farm Bureau Health Plans. FBHP.com/ATOZ for your new health plan. TDOT, keeping our state beautiful in Tennessee. And you can help out by joining NobodyTrashesTennessee.com and our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law, where a wreck can change your life forever, but they are always a click away to help at BartDurham.com. And all of our Senior Bowl coverage is brought to you by our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. Sam, you've been doing some great content, as has Easton. Easton is working on some more draft coverage sponsored and brought to you by our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law. But you can reach the Bart Durham team 24/7 to get your legal questions answered. 615-242-9000. You deserve to be paid for what you go through, including that big truck wreck or any car accident. Is Bart Durham Injury Law's fight for justice. You can visit them at the website, BartDurham.com. They have current news, blogs, contact, or live chat, and they've been in business in the state of Tennessee and beyond since 1975 and have years of that experience helping out Tennesseans. Now run by Blair, who is a Marine vet, the son of Bart Durham, who the late, great legend Bart Durham, who passed last spring. But BartDurham.com is where to go. Sam, you spent a lot of time watching wide receivers yesterday. I feel like we've only talked about quarterbacks in the draft to this point. So it was only a matter of time before we have to branch out beyond just Shedeur, just Cam Ward. I guess we've talked a little Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, but that's been a quarterback conversation whenever those other guys come up. But now it's time to turn the page to the wide receiver, and you were able to watch a handful of guys yesterday at day 2 practice there in Mobile.
Well, do allow me to say, by the way, if you are hungry for a little bit more quarterback content, you can go to A2ZSports.com to find out what some of these guys down here at the Senior Bowl were saying about quarterback Cam Ward yesterday. I had a chance to talk to Xavier Restrepo, a Miami wide receiver. Elijah Arroyo as well made comments about Cam Ward. and really just urging the Titans to pick him first overall. So go read that on A2Zsports.com if you want to, get your quarterback fill in. But yes, Austin, today is our wide receivers day. They're really, it's among, I would say, one of the needs, and I think we can have an interesting conversation about where exactly it was. But I always find it interesting to watch the wide receivers in the draft because the Senior Bowl is one of these events every year that gets a large contingent of second, third, fourth round draft prospects at wide receiver. So I spent each of the last 2 days really trying to hone in on that receiving talent, see which guys were popping as much as they popped on their film, who was surprising to me, guys that I kind of was out on and then back in on, but not insignificant stuff here. When we talked with Brian Callahan on Tuesday morning, he really mentioned that the wide receiver DB one-on-ones are one of the drills, and the offensive line, defensive line one-on-ones, that's kind of what the Titans are putting a lot of stock in. They like watching how these dudes move, how they separate in 1v1. And just kind of like, you can watch the tape, but when you get to see somebody move in person and see if the play speed translates to the eye test, I think it can be something that teams factor in for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've heard, Mike Borgonzi said this at one point during his availability. It's how do you compete? It's like the two things that are most important for teams evaluating players at events like the Senior Bowl or the East-West Shrine last week is interview process. How do you talk? What's your personality like? That's a first impression type thing. But actually watching guys compete. What happens after you lose a rep? What happens after you win a rep? Do you let that victory go to your head like the Titans allowed the victory over the Texans to go to their heads last season, and they got their ass kicked against the Commanders the week before or the week after? Or do you lose that rep and come out and fight the next one and have yourself a good day? So it's how do you compete? And I think all of us love wide receiver DB one-on-ones. That's our favorite thing overall in general. So before we dive into the needs and ranking of the wide receiver needs for the Titans, Sam, who are some wide receiver names that we should know that maybe we don't know? They're not the Ibuka from Ohio State who won the national championship on that big run, or any of these other guys that, these are not the first round, like Ted McMillan is not at the Senior Bowl from Arizona. So who are some of these names that have caught your eye over the last couple of days on the practice field at the wide receiver spot?
Well, I think you have to look kind of into that second or third tier. As you mentioned, there's Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, Emeka Egbuka. All of those dudes are going to be first-round picks for the most part. And you're probably familiar with them if you've been watching a lot of college football as a Titans fan. But as I said, the Senior Bowl likes to get those second-tier wide receivers. Last year, it was a group that included Luke McCaffrey, Xavier Legette, Ladd McConkey. And there were some real breakout great players at the Senior Bowl. And then there were some guys that were, taken in that same range that didn't necessarily work out. Ricky Pearsall was at the Senior Bowl as well. So for me, if you were to look, this is based off of NFL mock draft databases, consensus big board for where players are ranked. You really have to look at basically wide receiver 7, 8-ish, all the way down to wide receiver 10-ish. There is a chunk of players here with Xavier Restrepo from Miami, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, Jaylen Royals from Utah State, Tez Johnson from Oregon, Jaylin Noel out of Iowa State, Jack Betch from TCU. There's a decent little chunk of guys here that are all in that sort of second, third tier that are probably fighting to be early second, third round picks. That I think those are the names that if you're a Titans fan to get familiar with those names, because let's be honest, they're not taking a wide receiver in the first round of the draft.
Okay, right? Timeout. If they did take a wide receiver in the first round, it's a pretty interesting trade.
A massive, right? It's a trade down outside of like the top 10, probably.
I mean, what? Again, it's just spitting stuff, right? I think we have the draft order graphic up here. That's the official draft order graphic. Yeah, I believe this is it right here, right? The Raiders. Like, if the Raiders come up and you're at 6, is that a Ted McMillan spot?
I mean, it could be. I guess there's a conversation that needs to be had about need, right? Like, even if you're trading down, how big of a need is wide receiver for the team? I think it would take a pretty one. I would just say I don't think the Titans want to trade out of the top 4. I think they would be very hard pressed to take a deal that took them out of the range to draft one of the first 4 players on the draft. So I think realistically, we can kind of forget about some of these day 1 grade wide receivers and look at guys that are probably more likely to go on day 2. Now, the tricky part of that is that the Titans don't have a 3rd round pick either.
Yep.
And their 2nd round pick is towards the front at number 35 overall. So after 35, there is this big gap between 35 and 101 where the Titans do not have a pick. If they were to trade down from that 1st overall spot, you would assume that they'd like to get a pick somewhere in the 60s, 70s, where they could, have a little bit of a stopgap there to add some talent. So I'm looking at guys that are kind of in that 60 to 70, or maybe guys that could be available at 101. Because Austin, I guess, where does this rank?
Yeah.
Like, where does wide receiver rank for you on terms of needs? I have my own opinion about it, but I'm curious what you and I guess the chat would think from a fan perspective.
Yeah, let's just get into that, because where will you guys rank wide receiver among the Titans draft needs? We are letting you guys take it. Quarterbacks there, obviously. You've got pass rusher. There's the wide receiver spot, offensive line, inside linebacker could be a need. There's so many needs and holes on this team. And you can say offensive line. Well, are you talking about tackle? Or are you talking about guard? Because right now the right side of the O-line is completely wide open for this franchise. So where would wide receiver rank among their NFL draft needs? And then we'll dive into some of these. How do we find the right fit for the right level of need for the Titans right here? But first, I'm going to tell you guys about the Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Whenever you get hurt in life, you have to know who you can turn to and who you can trust, because injuries suck, honestly, right? They're a massive inconvenience for the lives that we want to live, and nobody likes being hurt, especially as you get older. Those injuries take longer to go away. They take longer to heal from. But if you use the great people and the great resources in Franklin at the Bone and Joint Institute, they can help you speed that along, just what they have with me with some tendonitis issues the last year or so, that I have not had a problem with my knee ever since I had a couple physical therapy visits there in the summer. Boneandjointtn.org is where to check them out, online in Franklin, right off of I-65 and Highway 96, right next to Williamson Medical Center. Boneandjointtn.org.
Today's show is brought to you by BetMGM. BetMGM is the sportsbook born in Vegas. Use the bonus code ATOZ Sports when you sign up with BetMGM and get up to $1,500 back in the form of a bonus bet if your first bet misses. Whatever that first bet wager amount is, it can go back into your account for a second chance to win big. All you got to do is sign up, use that bonus code ATOZ Sports with BetMGM.com.
All right, so Sam, where does the wide receiver position rank among the Titans draft needs? I'll let you go to the chat. I'm currently working on a YouTube poll because you know how much I love gathering that extra data. But I'm going to let you go to the YouTube chat, or to the chat overall on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. By the way, like the show. We need more likes on the show. Like the show. Subscribe to the channel. We are pushing so close to 20,000 subs on YouTube for our A to Z Sports Nashville channel. So please do that for us. Sam, what are you seeing where the wide receiver position ranks overall in Titans draft needs?
Daniel thinks it's the 3rd biggest need. Wilbur says 2nd. Maven says 5th. Esco says 4th behind quarterback, interior offensive line, and right tackle. We've got top 2 or 3, 3rd or 4th, 3rd after QB and edge. 3rd. A lot of people saying it's top 3, but that it's number 3. Top 3, but number 3. Number 4 or 5 on needs here. Titans Cal says 5th. It's QB, offensive tackle, offensive guard, edge, then wide receiver. We got a 3rd from Kaz, 3rd. That's the most popular answer by far. I see some people saying 4, some people saying 2.
Yeah.
But it's definitely number 3, I would say, is the median answer.
Okay. So on the YouTube poll that I did, first is not an option because I think we all know quarterback is number one, right? Like there is like, if we're asking what's the biggest draft need, everybody should together as a class say quarterback, right? So I just said second, third, fourth, or fifth for wide receiver. Are you okay with me eliminating the first biggest need as okay? All right, good. So because I'm looking at this, like if we're taking away the first round pick, I'm trying to think, it's like, how do you go with draft need for the team, but also do that in a vacuum, not accounting for what this class is, right? Like if you could build the perfect draft class for the Titans draft needs, what round would they select a wide receiver in? That's kind of how I'm trying to think of this. And I think I'm going to have to go with fourth.
Okay.
I think, and I'm not saying fourth round, I'm saying fourth in the rankings of need because quarterback's number one. I think you could flip-flop edge and right tackle as 2 or 3. And I think it's after that. I think you need an edge player. You need an offensive tackle you can build with before you need a wide receiver. That's how I say. I think, inside linebacker, whatever. It's like you can find those guys late in day 3. But I think fourth is the biggest, is where the wide receiver position ranks in the Titans draft needs. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I went back and forth with maybe doing fourth and saying fourth myself. I ultimately think I settle at third. I think quarterback is an unquestioned number 1. I think edge rusher is going to be number 2. You could argue edge is more important than quarterback, but it's just the positional value of quarterback that kind of takes over that one and makes it number 1 overall. I would put wide receiver over right tackle. And
really?
When you're looking at the draft specifically, yeah, because I need to look at value of the position and ability to get it in free agency. You can sign a right tackle in free agency for no problem because the Titans have a pretty young offensive line that's cost controlled, right? You have J.C. Latham on a rookie contract. You have Peter Skoronski on a rookie contract. I don't know what you do at right guard, but there's a very good chance you just bring back a guy like Dylan Radins and get him on a relatively team-friendly deal, and he's a fine starter for you at right guard. I think that's a real possibility for them. And then you do have the money to go ahead and, get an established right tackle to fix that problem for yourself. You don't have the same flexibility at wide receiver. You've already got $92 million tied up into the guy that you're going to pay. Teams don't pay multiple wide receivers $90, $100 million. That just doesn't really happen. You've got really one wide receiver on the roster in Calvin Ridley. So you're going to have to add some real talent to this team that's also young and cost controlled. You had DeAndre Hopkins. You had Tyler Boyd. You tried to do it the free agency and veteran route, and it didn't really work. So I think the Titans need to try and find guys that are going to be more stable in the wide receiver room. And unlike right tackle, I think you might be able to find a competent right tackle in the 4th round or the 5th round.
Okay.
Or something. I think there's a better chance you get a good right tackle in those mid rounds or early day 3 rounds than you do get an actual impact wide receiver. I think if you look at the guys that get drafted outside of a few anomalies of dudes that slip through the cracks, day 2 wide receivers are productive. And I think the Titans maybe don't need a superstar at the position, but they definitely need somebody that's productive. Nick Westbrook-Akine, not on the roster. So
currently
not on the roster.
So yeah, Corey's like, Sam, stop disrespecting. Sam said you only have one wide receiver on the roster.
Not a
NWI is expired currently.
Yes, correct.
So look, there's a lot of follow-up conversations to this because I think it's interesting that, look, you know more about this draft class than I do right now because I have not jumped into that yet. And you're literally at the Senior Bowl. So last year, I felt like, ooh, man, you can find an offensive lineman right there at the top of the 2nd round and just be in a really good spot, right? Because there was 12 guys that could go in the top 45 picks in the O-line, right?
Yeah.
There was also from your judgment, hindsight, knowing what the draft class was, this is a pretty damn good draft class this past year, right? I think like overall really good. How does this draft class compare to last draft class in the top 40 picks? Because the Titans have 2 picks in the top 40 last year and this year. We know what J.C. Latham and T'Vondre Sweat are. Are they capable of finding a player that's equal impact and caliber of T'Vondre Sweat at 35 this year compared to like what last year's draft looked like at the top of the second round?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, 35 is I think every year you should be able to find impactful players at 35 overall.
I just feel like this year I've heard, there's only like 12 first round grades on players overall. I feel like there are less first round talents in this class than last class, which means there are less T'Vondre Sweat caliber players in the 30s. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. T'Vondre Sweat was a guy who was kind of valued lower than the 30s, but teams didn't necessarily even have a second round grade on Sweat. He comes in and clearly plays up to being a second round player. There's a couple of tackles that I think are really interesting. A lot of them are left tackles that are in that 30 to 40 range that could be a factor for the Titans. There's not many wide receivers right there, but because the question with these wide receivers is which guys sneak into the first round and which guys will hang around to linger until the beginning of day 2. I just think when I look at needs, and I'm not saying that the Titans should necessarily take a wide receiver in the second round. I would actually argue that they probably won't. But when I look at needs of what needs to be addressed, I think you have a better chance at getting a roster. I also have reservations about them drafting a right tackle in general. Like, I'm not sure I want starting right tackle to be a day 2 rookie that you're like throwing out and hoping for the best. That's what NPF was, right? Why you might need to go get a veteran. You might need to go get a guy.
That's what I was going to ask you next. Real quick, I want to take a small detour before we get into that, because I was literally about to go there. But I did see a comment coming in here from Jason. It says, Austin, when are we going to stop listening to these experts? They get it wrong every single year. Look, Jason, NFL draft evaluation and preparation and mock drafting is the most imperfect thing you can do in sports media. Like, you're never going to be correct. You're going to be wrong every single year, because no one person can predict what 32 individual front offices and coaching staffs are going to do in order. So Jason, get off the expert's ass. It's evaluating talent. It's trying to look at this player, good player, that player, not good player. This player is better than that player because of these traits, this measurables, all that stuff. We're not trying to say we're going to predict all these guys are going to come off in this order. They get it wrong every year because it's impossible to get it right every year. We're early in the draft process, and this is the first time I have to go off on something like this, because the experts are out there doing a really good job to make it interesting, to where I know nothing about some of these wide receivers Sam's going to get into outside of Tez Johnson because he played the college football playoff and the Big Ten title game. We're trying to learn all of these different athletes and how they fit, because I can't watch Iowa State and Utah State every weekend. I tried to. I watched a couple of Utah State games this past year because I thought they were frauds, which they ended up being, but looks like they have some good wide receivers. So, Sam, my detour is over. Do you want to add anything to my detour, or you want to get back to where I was going?
No, you got it.
Okay, good. So you asked, or you basically said you would rather the Titans not draft the right tackle on day 2. You want them to get a veteran. I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to let you think about it for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Would the Titans be more likely to have success with a mid-level free agent right tackle or a mid-level free agent wide receiver to go along with what they have? Because we're expecting a different quarterback to be playing, right? Let's just add to the hypothetical. You have a rookie quarterback drafted number 1 overall. Shador, Cam, I don't care for this conversation. Would that number 1 overall pick quarterback have a better chance to have success with a rookie wide receiver paired with veteran mid-level free agent right tackle, or flip it, a veteran free agent mid-level wide receiver in a rookie right tackle. So I'll let you ponder that for a sec. But first, I'm going to tell you guys about Farm Bureau Health Plans. FBHP.com/ATOZ is where you should go for any health coverage needs. February 1st is like 2 days away. And the first of every month, any month of the year, if you're looking to get out of your current health coverage situation, Farm Bureau Health Plans can help you out and have that new coverage available once you get approved on the first of every month. So you're not stuck wherever you are. You're not. You can go to Farm Bureau Health Plans and they can help you out. They've been serving Tennesseans for 78 years. FBHP.com/ATOZ is the website to get started. You're not stuck. They can help you out. Great customer service that we've been working with over the last several years with Farm Bureau Health Plans. Once again, online, FBHP.com/ATOZ.
Today's show brought to you by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Use the bonus code ATOZ Sports when you sign up with BetMGM.com. Get up to $1,500 back in the form of a bonus bet if your first bet misses. That's all you got to do is sign up with that code ATOZ Sports, and you get a second chance to win big with our friends over at BetMGM.
All right, so Sam, I'll reset the question here, and I'm going to go to the YouTube poll and get where the wide receiver need ranks for the Titans here in a second too. Is a first overall pick quarterback for the Titans more likely to have success with a veteran mid-level receiver or a veteran mid-level right tackle where you have a rookie flip-flopped on the other one? So I think you understand my scenario here. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it has to be the tackle, right? Like so much.
You would rather prioritize veteran right tackle over veteran wide receiver and free. I guess that's what I'm asking, right? Is what's your priority in?
I think there is a unique opportunity to, if you are targeting a wide receiver in right, because here's the thing that we see all the time. Tackles are a real lottery ticket, especially when you're getting outside the first round, right? Like these are guys that could have all the physical tools and you're hoping you can develop them. We've seen the Titans do this with a couple of guys in the past, like Jaylin Duncan or Nicholas Petit-Frere, whatever it is. You take these guys, you hope it can stick. It doesn't always stick. Wide receivers are a more predictable entity. You generally know what their skill set is. And if you are, a good team at developing talent and analyzing talent, you generally know how it's going to fit in your offense. The reason why you can have a guy like Puka Nacua fall to day 3 of the NFL draft, get drafted and set a rookie record for receiving yards is because Sean McVay is able to watch Puka Nacua, know that he doesn't have all of these measurables, but know that he fits in the scheme that he wants to run in Los Angeles and apply that to him. Same thing goes for a lot of the guys that went on day 2, day 3 of the draft last year. Receivers that maybe were not the most beloved among draft experts or media or fans or whoever when they were first drafted, but they went into an offense where they can fit. I would much rather give Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi the task of find a guy who fits what you want to do, right? You've got Calvin. All right. Maybe you do bring back NWI. I don't know, whatever that is, but you've got Calvin, right? You've got Chig. You've got this quarterback. You know what you want your offense to look like. You're going to go get a quarterback that fits what you are. I see you're going to have a clear vision of your offense whenever you go get your quarterback. Now you get a wide receiver that plays a role that complements that nicely. I think I would rather have them do that and get something reliable that is not going to be a detriment at right tackle than the vice versa, right? Tyler Boyd was a nice, reliable wide receiver. What did he do to help the Titans win last year? Absolutely nothing, because
because NPF was saloon doors.
He was just kind of there, and because the entire scheme got bombarded by the fact that right tackle was an issue. So, yes, that's where I go to, where I'm like, if I'm looking at a non-guaranteed thing, and by non-guaranteed, I just mean you're going beyond blue chip prospects in the first round or even the second round, like that's when I say, all right, just go get your veteran tackle, even if it's a mid-level free agent. Get somebody who consistently started games in the NFL and make that happen. And I can live with rookie wide receivers.
Now, Corey says, was it Boyd's fault, though? No, that's Sam's point.
No, I'm just saying it wasn't Tyler Boyd's fault. Tyler Boyd came in, was signed here as just like a very mid-level, average veteran wide receiver signing that people were like, oh, nice, adds another weapon for Will Levis. Didn't matter because Will Levis was either bad or was playing well, but wasn't able to get the ball to him because the right side of the offensive line was so horrible that your scheme was basically thrown out the window.
Tyler Boyd's like, oh, I found the hole in the zone. Turn around. Ah, Will Levis is dead. Okay, great. Like that's,
right.
Cool. Like, I'm here, but he's down there. So that's not how that works. So I think I agree with you. But I also think that's why I still rank the wide receiver draft need behind offensive tackle, because you can find pieces
I see what you mean
later in the draft.
I guess,
at wide receiver.
I'm with you in the sense that, like, overall need for the team, I would put tackle over receiver. But I think when I look at the draft specifically, I think there's less of a need to do it in the draft when you look at right tackle. And I think there is a need for the Titans to go and get some young, controllable talent at the wide receiver position to not only have there at being cost effective and whatnot, but also have to be there and develop chemistry with your quarterback, develop chemistry with Calvin Ridley, and have some consistency in some of the offensive playmakers Brian Callahan is working with.
Yeah, like your guy Restrepo, who's there at the Senior Bowl, Miami receiver. He's not gonna be he's a day 3 pick, right? Like easily.
He could go round 3, but probably round 4 for him.
Right. You can find a lot of different things to do with him that you can't do with like a day 3 tackle.
Well, do you want to talk about the guys that I've got?
Yes, I do. I do want to. Yeah. So let's talk about the guys that Sam has pointed out. Sam's got 4 receivers specifically that caught his eye at the Senior Bowl throughout the last couple of days of Senior Bowl practice. We'll get to those guys here in a moment. But first, T-Dot. They're out there hustling and bustling, trying to keep our state beautiful in Tennessee, because Tennessee is a beautiful state. And T-Dot's out there spending millions of dollars, $20 million a year to keep our state beautiful and clean up that litter on the side of our roadways, because there's over 80 million pieces of litter on the roadways in our state. But you go to nobodytrashestennessee.com. You find out how you can jump in on that. That's nobodytrashestennessee.com. You can learn how to change your bad habits when it comes to littering, even accidental littering, when it comes to maybe your trucks or your vehicles that you don't realize that you could be doing things a little bit better to help out. Or if you and your family, maybe your kids, want to get involved with some good volunteer experience in your community, nobodytrashestennessee.com has opportunities for you to do that. It's going to be really nice weather next week. So go check out nobodytrashestennessee.com for those opportunities. And you can save money on tickets just by taking a litter quiz. Once again, nobodytrashestennessee.com.
BetMGM, it's the sportsbook born in Vegas, and with the bonus code ATOZ Sports, you can get up to $1,500 back in the form of a bonus bet if your first bet misses. That means that you fire off your first wager. And if you've used that bonus code at sign-up, ATOZ Sports, even if you lose, it's going back into your account for a second chance, up to $1,500. Like, big limit there. So if you want to make a big bet on the big game, maybe you go ahead and go to BetMGM and use that bonus code ATOZ Sports before you do it with the sportsbook born in Vegas.
All right, so real quick, before you dive into your 4 players, I'm going to update the YouTube poll. Where does wide receiver rank among the Titans' need in the draft? Second need is 23%. Third most important need is at 42%. My answer was 4th, which is 31%, and 5th, just 5%. So third biggest need is the biggest vote at 42%, with 4th being 31%. So I think I think for the most part, that's pretty comparable. I think the majority of people understand and know and believe quarterback need number 1, edge rusher probably need number 2, and then it's wide receiver, right tackle kind of conversation we've been having. So Sam, who are some guys that have caught your eye the last couple of days of practice?
All right, let's go ahead and get into the guys that, have caught my eye. I'm trying to pull up if I could try and load there it is. I'll load the big board as well so that I can give you
Okay.
the projected draft spot for some of these guys, or at least where the consensus board has them ranked. Let's go ahead and let's start with probably the most polarizing wide receiver that's down here at the Senior Bowl. It's Oregon wide receiver Tez Johnson. You see Tez Johnson, and really the knock against him has been his size. He weighed in at 157 pounds at the Senior Bowl. He draws a lot of comparisons to Tank Dell for that reason. I think Tank Dell was at like 163, 164 when he was at the Senior Bowl. I was kind of out on Tez Johnson coming into the Senior Bowl for that very reason. I just don't know how you can play in the NFL at that size. I will say he impressed me. Look at some of these releases, especially against press coverage. I mean, letting his speed work, really smooth route runner, winning vertically a lot of the time. And right there, going up against a much bigger corner, finding a way to use his agility to get open and create space. So right here as well, bouncing outside against another really talented guy and doesn't catch the ball because the quarterback play here has been atrocious. But, Tez Johnson getting it done regardless. So I think depending on who you talk to, people either love the speed and the playmaking that he can bring to the table, or they're all the way out because of the weight and the size.
Just a 157.
I mean, Tank Dell, that's Tank Dell, right?
Yeah, but Tank Dell's kind of like rocked up, isn't he? Like Tank Dell's pretty.
They're a very similar body type, Tez Johnson and Tank Dell. You can argue that Tank Dell won vertically a little bit more at the college level than Tez Johnson did, but I think he showed a decent amount here at the Senior Bowl of his ability to win deep. He's interesting. Not one of my favorites. I'll save my favorites for the end, but he's a guy that I have at least circled and on my radar here. And Tez Johnson, current overall ranking on the consensus big board is at 86. He's a guy that is sitting right in that round 3 pocket, but could potentially fall into round 4 and be available for the Titans at 101.
Bork says that Tank Dell 150. I'm sorry, Tez Johnson 157 is 0 percentile at the position.
Yes, correct. I mean, he's small. Can he gain 10 pounds? Probably, right?
But even at 10 pounds, he's tiny.
Yeah, he's tiny. He's small guy.
That's so small. What is this guy could do everything right and put on 15 pounds of muscle and not, without jeopardizing his quickness and his speed. And he's still like 15 pounds lighter than Kyle Phillips. It's just crazy.
I mean, Xavier Worthy's 165.
Yeah, but he's the fastest man on the planet. Yeah,
I'd be curious. Tez Johnson needs to run like a low 4.3 for people to care. Like you have to run 4.3 or below.
If it's 4.35 or slower, it's not good.
I agree. And so that will be
fast.
What people are looking for at the combine out of him. Again, this is why he's polarizing, because the production is there at Oregon. The speed is certainly there. Let me see if I can pull up real quick the exact numbers for what he did at Oregon. Had 83 catches, 900 yards, 10 touchdowns this year. Had 1,182 yards and 10 touchdowns the year before. 863 yards at Troy, a 5-year college player, so one of the more experienced guys in the draft as well. Polarizing figure for the height weight pretty much alone.
Somebody asked how big was Steve Smith Sr. Steve Smith Sr. was 5'9", 195. That guy was more running back type. Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into a guy who's quite literally the opposite. And it's going to be Iowa State's Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins, 6'4", well over 200 pounds, about 6'4", 220 for Jaden Higgins, 6'4", 217. I thought Jaden Higgins really struggled on Tuesday's practice. He just didn't separate like I was kind of hoping for him to do. But had a much better day on Wednesday. When I talked to him after practice, this was one of his better plays right there. Being that big, being able to release like that, that's what you're looking for. When I talked to Higgins, he said that he had to knock the rust off a little bit, that he had to gain some chemistry with these quarterbacks. A lot of people feel like he did that. There's Dylan Gabriel zipping a ball in there to him in 7-on-7 drills. He models his game a lot after Keenan Allen is one that he said to me as just like a bigger dude that wants to work on his route running craft. Best trait for Jaden Higgins is going to be his contested catches. He's a nice play strength down the field guy, had over 1,100 yards for Iowa State this year. I think what I find attractive about him is that low end. I think Jaden Higgins is pretty similar to what the Titans saw from Nick Westbrook-Ikhine this year. I think, he's a guy who doesn't always run away from dudes. He won't always separate. He's not the best route runner, but he has got very reliable hands and he knows where to be. And so for a nice big 6'4" target to also be able to catch anything that you throw at him, it is at least interesting. Consensus Big Board has Jaden Higgins 75. He is one of these guys that is interesting. He's probably going to go right in the middle of the third round. Could play his way up to the front of the third round, could maybe fall just a little bit. I don't really see him falling just because of the build. Probably a contender for the Titans if they trade back at some point and pick up a third round pick.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. Next on the list here.
Everybody was wanting to know. Actually, I'll save it for last. Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's see the other guy. This is the one guy that was not on my radar, and I, admittedly did not do a ton of research on him because he wasn't super high up on my list of guys that I wanted to watch. That all changed this week. Jaylin Noel out of Iowa State, the teammate of Jaden Higgins. This guy has probably had the best week at the Senior Bowl of any of the wide receivers here. It's the route running. It's the quick area, the short area quickness and speed, the ability to just make himself get open. Viewed kind of as a slot.
Yeah.
I didn't show the ability to play outside. He's not too undersized at all. I want to say he's like 5'11", 200 pounds. Maybe I'm getting his height a little wrong there. But he has a decent amount of weight on him. Let's see if I can find that real quick. Iowa State, they list him as, 5'11", 200 pounds, had 80 catches, about 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 4-year player for the Cyclones. And this is something I like about him as well. Production increased every single year. Freshman year, 265 yards, 0 touchdowns. Sophomore year, 572 yards, 3 touchdowns. Junior year, 820 yards, 7 touchdowns, then all the way up to 1,208.
Yeah.
So he stepped it up each and every year, kept getting better. I think a lot of teams, had their heads on a swivel watching Jaylin Noel run routes. So somebody that I'm going to reserve the right to get very bullish on. I think his consensus ranking of 120 is low for where he'll end up going. I think he ends up going on day 2 at some point. So would be an ideal person, I think, to fall to the Titans at 101. But with the way that he played this week, I don't necessarily see him getting there.
Okay, interesting. I do like that. I like the production stair step. That's important. And the route running, as Andre said, smooth.
Versatility would fit really well in the Titans offense, right? You know kind of what Calvin Ridley's going to do, but a guy who's able to line up in the slot, a guy who's able to line up out wide and do both very well and create space. That was my one issue with Tyler Boyd, right? Tyler Boyd got open, but Tyler Boyd was schemed open against zone. Tyler Boyd doesn't beat man. Jaylin Noel's a man beater, and a man beater that can be in the slot and also play with decent play for you.
Well, it's like getting open. It's like the tail end of this first route is like he's covered, good coverage, but then bang, I can get open and go out there and make the play on the football. And same here, a lot of route nuances, like the little head twist at the middle of that route was my favorite. Like the little head bob, because that'll throw a corner just for like that split second to buy yourself all the time you need to get open and for a completion. All right, who's this last one? Do you want to save for last?
Well, this is my guy. Okay, so I do this with wide receivers. I've made a habit of doing this with wide receivers every year. All right, 2 years ago, A2ZSports.com, I was banging the table for Rashee Rice. Okay,
that's right.
And by the way, I don't go for these first round guys. I don't go.
You're deep cut guy.
I go into those deep cut guys that you might not know about, and I tell you why you're undervaluing a certain player, why they should be more valued, why they're going to have a bigger impact than people realize. 2 years ago was Rashee Rice. Last year, it was Jalen McMillan.
Yeah.
Back half of the year, Jalen McMillan, he scored 9 touchdowns or whatever, had a monster rookie season for the Bucs. He's going to keep building into a better receiver. So I'm calling my shot this year. The most undervalued wide receiver in this draft right now is Utah State's Jaylen Royals. This guy reminds me of DJ Moore. He reminds me of Jaden Reed out of Green Bay. When you look at him and you look at his lower half, he's just so thick in the lower half. He's 200 pounds or well over 200 pounds, has good size. He's about 6'2", 6'1", not an overly tall guy, but really, really physical. And oh, by the way, probably the best yards after catch guy in the entire draft class. Just has really, really explosive speed to put his foot on the ground, get vertical, and make a play. He was one of the better guys in the draft class as well in yards per catch. When you throw to Jaden Reed, I'm already calling him Jaden Reed. When you throw to Jaylen Royals, you know that a big play is coming. So if you go watch his tape at Utah State too, really incredible, Austin, the way that he's able to make guys miss in a phone booth, as they say. He can have a guy right on top of him, really only have one way to go, and he still kind of finds a way to let him miss. It's a really interesting style of play for such a big wide receiver. I think he's a good enough route runner, but I think once the ball is in his hands, he's so explosive. The Titans are would really be able to get him involved in the screen game, in the short passing game, and then let his athleticism take over the rest of the way. So this is my guy. The reason why I think he's undervalued is because he had a knee injury. He played 6 games at Utah State this past year, was pacing to have a monster year with like 1,400.
Looks like seven games.
7. So he's 7. He missed 6. Then he made it like right to the halfway point. And he, do you mean to read
his stats, his last 4 games?
Yes. Love it.
Okay. 10 catches, 112 and a touchdown. 9 catches, 211 and 2 touchdowns, long of 75. 10 catches, 155 and a touchdown. 11 catches, 188 and a touchdown for a long of 59. So his last 4 games, I mean, that's just a ton of yards.
I mean, his junior year at Utah State, he had 1,000 yards. He caught 15 touchdowns and then was on pace to do it again with another like 12, 13, 14 touchdown season with like 1,400 yards. By the way, his quarterback, Spencer Petras, that dude from Iowa that couldn't throw a ball forward. So did not have good quarterback play at Utah State either, where it still got it done. Really, like this to me, his grade right now, I believe they have him at like 76 on the consensus big board. This is a guy that I think is going to keep going in the right direction.
Now,
like
somebody's
I'm
like
all over it. And
yeah, now I saw Jeff and others like, but versus who these numbers? That 9 catches for 211 and 2 touchdowns, the long of 75, was against Boise State. You know, I mean,
played UNLV too, and had 10 and 155 against UNLV, which was another team that was very good and ranked for a chunk of the year.
I mean, so like, look, he's a Utah State receiver. You're not playing the best competition. We get that, but I'd rather see that dude put up like average of 170 in a 4-game stretch against those guys than a guy who's averaging like 60, 70 yards in some other spot. You know, at least he's productive. So I mean.
Sorry, go ahead.
The back-to-back years of big production before the injury is very intriguing. Now, again, what are we talking about here? We're talking about like a day 3
now. I mean, he's 6 feet, 205 to 210. This, like, again, it's hard because Royals is my guy who I think would be like the perfect addition for the Titans. And yet I think they probably only have a chance to draft him if they trade down from number 1 and pick up a 3rd, or trade down from 35 and pick up a 3rd in that trade somehow. Or if you trade down from 35, maybe you take him in round 2 at pick 45. I don't know, but whoever gets him is going to be very, very happy. Hey, the Bucs were really happy when they got Jalen McMillan after I told them they would be. The Chiefs were really happy with Rashee Rice after they got him, and I told them they would be. I think Jaylen Royals is going to make a team really happy and will be a really big impactful wide receiver for a team that you can get outside of the first round.
Yeah. Jeff's like, oh, the Penn State wide receivers did work against Boise State. I mean, 5 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown, like for all of the wide receivers. Like that's not one Penn State guy. That's like the 2 Penn State receivers
touchdown for 2 Penn State wide receivers.
For 2 Penn State receivers that in a game where they only completed 13 passes for 170 yards. Like, because Tyler Warren's a badass and had 6 for 63 and 2 touchdowns. So it's like, okay, like again, we're like Sam's whole point is deep cut, right? This is this guy he's going with.
I'm letting you know about the guys that you don't, right? I could sit here and be like, hey, Ted McMillan, good player. Go get Ted McMillan. Right. But no, that's not what we're here to do at the Senior Bowl. We're here to get information.
Jeff's like, Abuka's going to be a beast in the NFL. It's like, okay, yeah, way to step out on that limb.
Right. You know, first round pick.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He's going to be first round pick.
Like, what are we talking about here? We're talking about
when we were here at the Senior Bowl last year, 2 of the guys, again, I was sitting there, I was watching T'Vondre Sweat, and I was like really, really impressed with the work that he was doing. And then when the Titans take T'Vondre Sweat ahead of where everybody's initial reaction for T'Vondre Sweat was, what the heck are they doing? Right? They overdrafted him. My mock draft projection said that I got him in the 4th round on my mock draft. So how are they taking him in the 2nd? Well, I was able to say, hey, I've been watching him. Calm it down. This will be okay. This will be all right. Because, you know, you got to get information about those deep cut guys, those round 2, round 3, round 4 sort of guys. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. was a standout here at the Senior Bowl last year. And so when the Titans drafted Jarvis Brownlee Jr., everybody that was down at the Senior Bowl had some insight, had some familiarity with him. That's what we're here to do. So I'm just letting you know, I'm putting guys on your radar, chat. Go watch it. Go watch Jaylen Royals from Utah State a little bit.
Puka Nacua had a bunch of yards at Boise State, Jeff. But against who? Against who, Jeff? Who is Puka Nacua put up yards at Boise State against? Like,
he was at BYU.
Oh yeah, I mean, same thing.
I mean, they were same.
Why did I think Boise State? Anyway, like there's small school receivers all the time.
Cooper Kupp went to Eastern Washington.
Yeah, Antonio Brown, Central Michigan. I mean, there's all types of stuff like that. Like, I mean, come on. We're trying to find the 4th round receiver because the Titans don't have a 3rd round pick as of now. So I like it. Okay. We'll see how much these 4 names stick into our brains over the next 3 months. We do have a super chat to get to real quick before we wrap this thing up and let Sam get to Senior Bowl practice. Andre, wide receiver depth is 4th or 5th. Wide receiver 1 is a coin toss with edge, talking about needs, which I don't agree with that at all. I think edge is a massive need. I think they have a wide receiver.
You need an edge more than, I mean, you could argue Ridley's a 2, right? I'll probably hear that argument definitely and say he's probably he's closer to a 2 than he is a true 1. But I think you're okay with if you can find you need an edge. They don't have edge play. They need an edge so badly.
Yeah, and we'll find out what they do with Harold Landry because, you know, that's a decision that will have to be addressed here soon. All right, that's it for us on this Thursday. Shout out to Wilson County Hyundai. Make them a part of your new car buying process. See them in Lebanon or online, wilsoncountyhyundai.com. Sam, you're heading back out to Senior Bowl practice. Once again, shout out to our friends at Bart Durham Injury Law, who is making all of our Senior Bowl coverage happen. You'll have some more content coming on social media. So will Easton, A2Zsports.com/Titans for more of their content, as well as Miami players talking the game for Cam Ward to go 1 overall right there at A2Zsports.com. You go check that out. But make sure you hit that like button. Like the show before you go. We're closing in so fast on 20,000 subs. Make sure you help us out. Do that, and we'll catch you guys later on Buck Rising Live tonight for primetime Senior Bowl coverage throughout the day on social. We'll see you later. Appreciate it as always.